Good morning and welcome to part two in our electric school bus training webinar series. And today we will be working on training your staff. This series, before we get started, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions, please utilize the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And if you're having any other technical issues that you want to share with the group or any questions, we ask you to use the chat options. At the end of each session, we will email you resources that we discussed today and maybe any read ahead documents that you may need for the next series. Same time, same place, every Tuesday morning. And at the conclusion of today's training, we also want to ask that you complete our feedback survey. That'll help us to understand your technical support needs and better improve our training offerings. And lastly, this session, again, will be recorded and we will post it to be shared at a later date. And you can also share it with your coworkers. And that's about it for all the housekeeping items. So let's get started. Again, this series is designed specifically for school transportation directors, fleet managers, and district decision makers who are either considering electric school buses or already operating them and working through the operational questions. And across this four-part series, we will be focusing on practical fleet management topics, including procurement and ordering buses, charging infrastructure planning, staffing and training, maintenance planning, managing warranties, parts, and ongoing operations. And our goal is simple, to help you all to operate your electric school buses safely, reliably, and cost effectively. So today we will be hearing through all the different processes and parts of the supply chain, as you would say, of everything from the dealerships all the way through to the end users. So drivers, technicians, fleet managers, first responders, administrative decision makers, these are all the people who need to be trained across all the different groups when you're bringing in a new technology for electric school bus, such as electric school buses. And let's get right started with the experts. So they are still relatively new for many school districts, but we know that with the right planning, training, and partnerships, that you can operate these vehicles reliably and effectively, and you can have a great experience with this. So our first speaker today is Brandon Sanji, and he's with the Capital Area Transit System. They have been working with electric buses for many years now, and they have some great experience and some tips for all of you. After that, we are going to hear from Dan and Christian with Highland Electric Fleets. They work with fleets and help them train on the vehicles and their consultants. And if you would hear on the last one, you would have heard from them. They're going to be with us for for a lot of these sessions here. After that, we have Dealership Insights with Andrus of Ride. Actually, I think Andrus is going to be right after Brandon. And then we're going to conclude with training in Louisiana to learn a little bit more about some of the other options that we have here for additional training. So let's hop right into it with Brandon with the Capital Area Transit System, and he is going to be talking to you today about their experience with electric transit buses. Brandon, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have been wonderfully introduced. I am Brandon Sanji. I'm the service planner and scheduler for the Capital Area Transit System here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I have been a part of the agency since 2017. It has been a wonderful experience. I came in right as CATS put out a RFP, or I'm sorry, an invitation to bid for battery electric buses. As we began our foray into integrating new type of technology into our fleet. So Cass's experience with electric vehicles, with electric transit buses, and the two different types of industries can kind of coexist as the platform is essentially the same. It is a bus, it moves people. School buses move little people. We move big people. Our experience started back in 2019 with our invitation to bid, to having our first three battery electric buses delivered by BYD, now known as Ride. These use an AC charging system. So it was a little different from us who are used to just putting diesel in a bus and going along. So there was a learning curve. Since the initial delivery of the three, we have expanded our fleet to over 24 battery electric buses, with BYD being the majority of those. But we recently took delivery last year of 9 Gillig battery electric buses. Those will be used on Louisiana's first bus rapid transit route in the capital region, um, using all electric vehicles. So we're really excited about that. So what we have learned over these past few years regarding operating electric vehicles is, one, you do want to make sure that you um, bring in your utilities coordinators first, whoever may be providing power to your property. Make sure that you coordinate with them to find out what type of infrastructure is going to be needed to support the charging. In the same conversation, you also want to make sure that your vehicle manufacturer is brought in as well. This will help you avoid any type of hiccups that may occur throughout the project, whether it be the construction of any new type of charging stations or just ongoing maintenance of your charging infrastructure. Um, of course, that ongoing support will also be needed from your vehicle manufacturer, especially when things are covered by warranty. You do not want to void your warranty. We all know what happens with our own vehicles. If something is covered in a warranty, you take it straight to the dealership. You should probably do the same thing here. Do not underestimate those warranties, and make sure that the staff that you have on that are trained and knowledgeable of the vehicles understand what are their responsibilities as far as repairs, versus what is the manufacturer's responsibility of repairs. And that warranty can also extend to your charging infrastructure as well. Um, the ongoing support also needs training. Training is something that we have identified as 4 pillars here at CATS that will support fleet deployment your fleet deployment, as well as your fleet success. We understand that people may have range anxiety when it comes down to operating electric vehicles. Our vehicles range around 200 to 350 miles, depending on the manufacturer. We um we still have some range anxiety, but the duty cycle of a transit bus and a school bus are two totally different things. Our transit buses have to operate before the city wakes up, and it has to operate after the city goes to sleep. School buses have to get the kids to school and get them back. So there's some downtime that allows for charging. Depending on how you deploy your vehicles, it is strongly recommended that if you have any electric vehicles, you want your chargers to be located at whatever your central maintenance facility would be. And either or the driver or a mechanic or technician must be trained on how to properly charge the vehicle. We at CATS have the practice where our operators do not plug up the vehicles. That is something that is only handled by maintenance personnel, under supervision as well. And the final part of this is just making sure that you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's when it comes down to operating your battery electric fleet, making sure that everyone is knowledgeable about what you have going on. And that also includes first responders. We did participate in the exercise with the Baton Rouge Fire Department in how to deal with any spontaneous combustion that may occur with an electric vehicle. So that way, everyone is prepared, everyone is knowledgeable, we know what's going on, no one's caught off guard, and that your deployment is completely successful and you're able to maintain your fleet for the many days ahead.
Thank you, Brandon. So how much of, oh, sorry, let me turn my camera back on. So how much of the training that y'all provided was done by the manufacturer of the vehicles and the dealerships, and how much was done maybe by third parties or by you all at CATS for your staff?
For the most, when we first got the BYDs, they did come through and train all of our bus operators, as well as our mechanics. And as far as the ongoing training, we still rely on BYD for when things are under warranty. The technician that we have that represents our area will come down. He will show the staff, hey, here's what I'm working on. Here's what the problem is. Here's how you resolve this problem. You can always call me back. But he has ongoing infield training whenever we have issues as well. And with the Gillig buses, they have come down to certify and will be returning sometime this year to do more in-depth training. But we also have another partner or subcontractor through Gillig, which is ChargePoint. ChargePoint did a class on how to charge the vehicle, how to make sure that the charging system, the charging infrastructure is properly working, and how to diagnose and the support that they will give us in case something does go wrong.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. So
Mhm.
do your maintenance staff, your drivers, and maybe your executives, are they all in the same training classes, or do you have different classes for each of the different groups?
Each department has a different class, so that way you can focus on the individual department's strengths and what they do in their daily day. The bus operators are trained on how to operate the vehicle, and excuse me, identify any issues that may arise, any warning indicators. Maintenance is trained on how to maintain the charging system on board the vehicle. Um, and our C-suite employees, our administrative employees, are trained on the various dashboards, what to look for, warning signs, trends, and data.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank
Does
you.
any of our attendees today have any questions for Brandon before I keep hogging him up? And feel free to put them in the chat, or you can also raise your hand and we can unmute you if you have a question. All right, I do have one more. So how many hours do you think, like how many hours do these classes take? Has this been a couple 1 hour classes, or have you sat them down for like a whole 8 hour day? And what have you found works best?
Um, the charge point class that we recently had was it was 2 hours in the classroom and then an additional 30 minutes in the field.
Hmm.
What I found is you definitely want to have small, intimate classes, maybe 4 to 5 people per class if you're able to spare. Um, I don't think that it would be beneficial for an entire department. You know, you don't want to have all of your maintenance personnel or all of your operators all in one class, though it may save yourself some time and some money. Um, Definitely making sure that people understand the information given to them in a more one-on-one and personal basis. That's what I have found that works the best because someone may be afraid to ask a question or double up on a question. That one-on-one, hands-on teaching is definitely the way to go when it comes down to training. You definitely want to make sure that you keep it about 1.5 to 2 hours. Make sure you have snacks. That's the most
Hmm.
important thing. Please make sure you have snacks. People like snacks just as much as they like information. Um, and make it interactive. Don't just, hey, this is what we're doing, X, Y, and Z. Ask them questions. Make it a more personal approach when you're doing these questions because people may be more responsive to the approach than I'm just reading off of a PowerPoint.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Are there any last tips or lessons learned? Anything you would do differently or something you really enjoyed before we pass it
Uh,
on to Andres?
Definitely give the people all the information that you have. Don't try to overload or dump it, but we want to make sure that everyone who may be anxious around electric vehicles because it's not a traditional internal combustion vehicle understands that this is safe technology. It's not new technology, but it may be new to them. And there's nothing wrong with being afraid, but if once you understand what the equipment that you have and what you're dealing with, it will make it so much easier in your day-to-day working life.
Definitely. Thank you, Brandon.
Mhm.
Awesome. So if you could stick around, that'd be great. We'd love to have you in case there's some other questions that come up. But thank you so much, Brandon. All right, next we're going to hear from that dealership that Brandon was just talking about, and that is going to be Andres Dillons, and he he's with Ride, formerly called BYD, and you have the floor, Andres.
Thank you, Ann. Yeah, let me share my screen here. Hopefully I'll get this right this time. Uh,
It's coming.
okay. Is that looking okay, or am I showing you
It
all
is
my
now.
content?
We can see your content. We can see
Okay.
your notes.
Okay. Does that change anything?
No. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. That
Yeah?
looks good.
Okay. Awesome. Excellent. All right. Well, yeah, let's get started here. So, like Ann mentioned, my name is Andrew Stellans. I am with Ride. Ride is an electric vehicle OEM. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that in just a moment. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years now. I've been in the EV space for about six. Started out kind of in more of an engineering function, and now I'm a regional sales manager. I'm based out in Colorado, but Louisiana is my territory. I was actually just out in Louisiana for the LASTO school conference, which is a lot of fun. So, for those of you who don't know much about Ride and BYD, this is a little bit of our history here. So, we started back in 1995 as a battery manufacturer. So that's really our origins, and we came out to the United States in 1999, still as a battery manufacturer. So for those of you guys who are familiar with the early Motorola Razr flip phones, super thin ones, the reason they were so thin was actually because we partnered with Motorola and provided the batteries for them. So that was kind of one of our big breakout deals here in the U.S. In 2013, we moved out to Los Angeles. We started opening a manufacturing facility, and we started with a lot of different commercial vehicles, primarily with city buses. So by 2019, we'd already delivered 300, and I believe some of those 300 were the CATS deployment that Brandon was just mentioning. We moved into the school bus space in about 2021, started with our Type A bus, and then rebranded to Ride in 2023. And since then have deployed a couple of different models, the Type C and the Type D as well. Globally speaking, we do have a bunch of different business divisions, all focusing on electric technology. So we do have electric forklifts, all sorts of different electric buses, from coach buses to school buses, electric trucks. We have passenger vehicles. Those are not available in the States right now, but they are globally. Different size electronics, batteries and energy storage systems, and SkyRail and Sky Shuttle as well. So, all that being said, we really do kind of think of ourselves as the experts in the electric vehicle space. Um, right now we actually are the second biggest battery manufacturer globally, and our passenger vehicles are the number one selling EVs globally, outselling Tesla. This slide is a few years old at this point, but we do move volume in terms of the commercial vehicles as well. So we've delivered well over 100,000 electric buses at this point. These buses have been on the road, I want to say probably 15, 16 years now, probably well over 20,000 trucks at this point as well. The US proportion is a little bit smaller, but that being said, we still do have thousands of vehicles on the road here. I think between the buses and trucks in the US, we're at, about 4,000 or more, I want to say. So, like I said, we do have quite a bit of experience. So, we feel qualified to kind of be talking on this topic here. And then finally, one of our biggest advantages, having started as a battery manufacturer, batteries being such a huge aspect of electric vehicles, our batteries really are top of the line. They are quite safe. They use a chemistry that is non-combustible, so they will not actually catch fire and lead to thermal runaway like some other OEMs early models might have. So we provide the safest and most high-tech battery on the market. Um, yeah, and we also have the leading warranty on that, which is an average of about 12 years. So getting kind of into the meat of it, I've got a couple different sections in this presentation. for you guys. So the first one is actually going to be kind of walking through ordering a bus from the dealer and the OEM perspective, and then I'll get into training. And also that being said, so we do have a dealer in Louisiana. It's Model One. They're based out of Slidell. Unfortunately, they were not able to attend today, so I'll speak on their behalf. If there's some dealer-specific questions after the fact, I can definitely pass it along to them. But this is kind of the general process that we usually go through in terms of ordering a bus. I want to start off with saying that we do have all three different types of buses available. Type A, kind of the smaller bus, the Type C, and the Type D flat nose bus. All those are viable options. We do have them deployed across the nation at this point. So whichever one you're looking for, we do have those available. So starting off, basically, when you're kicking off an electric school bus project, you want to start with doing some background research. And so this is going to start with researching your bus options. We're going to want to use your resources from either OEMs, other school districts that might have had electric bus deployments, or at this point, there's actually a lot of different online resources that you can access that aggregate all the different bus manufacturers and different bus models, and can kind of tell you about what their ranges are, what the different technical specifications are, that sort of thing. So definitely use those resources, kind of get a foot in the door to figure out, what the different terminology is and what's out there. The second step is going to be identifying viable routes. So one of the differences between electric buses and internal combustion is that they are a little bit more limited in terms of range. At this point, it's different now than 10 years ago. At this point, buses do have really good range. So I want to say about 95% of routes will be able to be covered by electric buses. But that being said, to get kind of a starting point, you will likely choose something that's a little bit more in town. You likely want to choose, something that's not going to be, long field trips, that sort of thing. Um, just to make sure that you minimize your range anxiety. And there are a variety of route analysis tools online as well, that can, even input specific bus models, and you can input your route information that can see if that works out well for you. Up next, you also want to identify funding. So typically, the upfront cost for electric buses is a little bit higher than internal combustion. So you want to be cognizant of that. A lot of folks do use funding, whether that's federal, local, state. Sometimes utilities have funding available. Or maybe, if you're very fortunate, you can just do a CapEx expenditure and purchase it straight up. But more often than not, you likely will have to take a look at what funding is available. I do also want to say we are looking at EPA funding coming available in about mid-May is the latest word. There hasn't been a lot of firm data on that quite yet, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So if you guys are interested in electric buses, definitely something to look into. And then finally, especially if you're using funding, bus scrappage is oftentimes a requirement. So you want to evaluate within your fleet which bus you might be swapping out. And typically there are age and operational criteria as to which buses you can scrap. They might need to be, let's say, older than 2009. They do have to be operational in the sense that you have to run them at least 2 or 3 times a week. They can't just be sitting. So you do also want to identify, if you do use funding, whether you have buses that you could scrap. All right. All right. So I really also want to encourage, as a next step after you kind of do the basic research, doing a demo is an absolutely huge aspect to selecting a bus. That way you actually get to get a feel for how they drive, where the charge port location is. You should be able to get a sense for the reliability and the build quality as well. Really putting hands on it, that's kind of the real proof of what the product is. Especially if you are new to electric school buses, you definitely want to put your hands on it. For us at Ride, we definitely encourage people to actually take them out to their school district. It's free of charge. You can run some routes. You can have your mechanics inspect them, that sort of thing. I would highly, highly recommend that. And you're able to learn a lot more about it that way than just having somebody talk at you about it. Once you've done kind of the basics, there are some deeper considerations. So, like Brandon was mentioning, the infrastructure is a huge aspect to this as well. Ultimately, buying a bus is quite simple. It's fairly easy to get a grasp for it. But the more complicated aspect is going to be the charging. And there's a number of considerations here. It's, how fast do you need to charge? Can you charge overnight, or do you need to have an opportunity charge in the middle of the day, maybe during like a lunch dwell period? It's also considering how many buses you have and how much total energy you would be spending to charge these buses. And that's going to relate to your current capacity, your current electrical infrastructure at your site. So you're going to really want to kind of consider that, and you're going to be bringing your utility in to discuss that as well. Because sometimes you do need infrastructure upgrades. You will be putting chargers in at your bus depot. And oftentimes that's actually a longer lead time item than purchasing a bus. So definitely before you buy it, but I would say probably after you start considering buses, you're going to want to be looking into the charging aspect. And then the funding requirements. So all these different funding options, they often will have an application timeline, and sometimes they also have a deployment timeline, which means how long after you receive funding do you need to have buses and infrastructure in place and ready to go? Because they don't want this project to take, years upon years for you. They want to make sure that you're on it and able to actually use the buses that they're paying you to purchase. As an example, the EPA funding that's been present previously and that's going to be coming out, they actually really try to help you with a couple of these more in-depth steps. They had 1 year, I think the first year that they did this program, a lot of school districts that applied for the funding weren't actually ready to purchase the buses, the infrastructure. Their school board wasn't aware of it. The utility didn't know anything about it. And they started running into a lot of actual, operational issues where they weren't able to complete the project. So before you're able to submit your application to the EPA, they do request that you sign off with a school board so that the school board is aware of what you're trying to accomplish, and that you also sign off with your utility so that the utility can do a site walk if need be and sign off on any potential infrastructure upgrades you might need with that deployment. So that's actually, a really good proactive step. They're trying to kind of push you to making sure that you've got everything lined up before you actually try to deploy. And then once you're ready to buy, so this would be after you receive some funding, you want to meet with the dealer or the OEM to finalize a specification. Every state has different spec, every school district has different spec. You're going anything as minute as cup holders, entertainment systems, or it can be something more in depth, camera systems, different battery capacities. It really can be quite in depth there. So you want to make sure that you finalize it, tailor it exactly to how you want to do it. And then generally speaking, in Louisiana specifically too, there's kind of three different purchasing options. You can go through a third-party contractor. We're talking like a First Student or a National Express or a Highland Fleets. That's a little bit out of the scope for this conversation. Or you can go through a dealership like our Model 1, or you can also go through a cooperative purchasing agreement. So we are on the state contract. Buy Board, Sourcewell are also options. And then, and then you go and place the PO. So moving on from the actual procurement process, this is kind of what happens afterwards. The delivery timeline is about 10 to 14 months. That's for us specifically. It is depending on the specification, the time of year that you buy it, whether we have any kind of inventory in place. During this build process, the school district really doesn't have a whole lot of involvement. We're just going to kind of keep you updated in terms of anything that's happening, what the specifics are in the process, that type of thing. Before we ship the bus to you, we do offer an inspection. We personally do pre-delivery inspections just to make sure that they're, everything's up to snuff. If we go through a dealer, once the bus gets shipped to the dealer would also do a pre-delivery inspection. But we do also welcome you to our facility in the Los Angeles area if you have the time and resources to come out to actually see the bus before it ships out, make sure that everything is up to snuff. And ultimately, kind of the big takeaway for this, a lot of folks are a little bit, nervous around electric school buses, and they're just always telling me, hey, we're not ready for this right now. This is just maybe a little bit too soon. It's a wait and see process, all that kind of thing. And the big takeaway from me working in this industry, this is one of those procurements that takes some time. Generally from end to end, especially if you're applying for funding, from the learning stage all the way to deployment, oftentimes can take, 2.5 years or so. Quickest we've seen is probably a year and a half. Especially if you're taking the time to apply to funding. But it is kind of a lengthy process. So you really are looking into the future when you're doing this. It's never really too early to start, especially the learning stage. You want to make sure you're familiar with the technology, figuring out, what the range numbers mean, how they perform in different weather conditions, what do the battery capacities mean, that sort of thing, and then actually testing the product. So yeah, I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's definitely a worthwhile effort. I'm not trying to scare you away from it by any means. Um, but yeah, give yourself some time. This isn't going to happen overnight, so definitely don't be nervous if it seems like it's too soon. And then certainly the industry, it is it's quite mature at this point. It's like Brandon was saying as well. It's not brand new. So we're happy to hold your hand through it and help you out. So that's the ordering aspect of it. I do have, and I saw you popped up on camera. I do still have a few more slides here on training as well. I'll try to go pretty quick on that, just to not take up too much of y'all's time.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, and I did also want to touch on dealer maintenance here real quick. So, um, dealers do also provide maintenance. So that is one of the big things that a local service shop is good for a brick and mortar location, just to give you peace of mind on the service. Maintenance strategies are personal depending on how close you are to the dealer, how much maintenance you like to do, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, the dealer is the first line of defense. They will offer the warranty, they'll have some parts inventory, and they will have a local tech with a diagnostic tool. And they're also able to help coordinate with the OEM should it need to be more in depth. Okay, then I'll run through the staff training here. So once again, yeah, Brandon did cover a good amount on this. I'll just do kind of an overview from our perspective. So there's a variety of different levels that we offer. And we can start with kind of the general overview. And this would, even this presentation, I would maybe call kind of like a general overview. It's kind of like a verbal once over or utilizing digital resources, whether it's a webinar or maybe like a video overview. I know a lot of OEMs have video overviews. We're working on one right now. And they can be provided upon request. Basically, before you even receive a bus, you're able to see something about the driver controls, the driving characteristics of the bus, charging, other kind of considerations, you know, things like, yeah, EV versus diesel, what is regenerative braking, hill hold, the creep functionality, which is basically in an automatic car, when you take your foot off the brake, the car creeps forward. Some electric buses have that, some don't. Other digital resources could be owner's manuals, first responder guides, and basic high voltage safety, which amounts to essentially not yanking on orange cabling, because that's going to be the high voltage stuff. The next level up is the operator training, which would basically be an in-person overview of all the basics that I just mentioned. This is once you already have a bus delivered and it is going to be oriented towards drivers. You will have some basic component ID. We're talking about 12-volt batteries, cutoff switches, coolant reservoirs, that sort type of thing. You can go out for a drive to actually, test it out with somebody kind of looking over your shoulder and helping you out. Once again, you get to try out the regen braking and the creep functionality. Safety, so you'll actually get, they will point out what components to touch, which ones not to touch, and you might even get like a little pre-trip inspection review if you want some help with that. Going more in depth, we do also offer service training. And so this is offered both, to dealerships, our partner dealerships, or it can be a local service shop if you prefer. This can be your own technicians if you have them. And there are different levels of it. Typically, we request that anybody being trained on the service aspect has high voltage safety training prior to this. Our service trainers can help with high voltage safety training, but there are actual certification classes that provide that training. That's understanding what does high voltage actually mean, how to identify high voltage, any kind of PPE that you need to keep yourself safe, that kind of thing. In terms of training that we provide, we've got kind of basic levels. So this would be, kind of easy maintenance, very non-intrusive. Identifying how to be safe around our components specifically, lockout, tagout procedures, just to make sure that, the system is locked out and nobody can accidentally, get shocked or injured while working on the vehicle. Yeah, more in-depth high voltage component identification, towing recovery, um, our preventative maintenance schedule and kind of fluid changes. And then this last note there is it's usually not related to actually any high voltage component work. It's usually like a diagnostic overview and covers, you know, how to communicate with the OEM should something go wrong. Going more in depth, we actually train you on a diagnostic tool, and you would maybe practice repairing low and high voltage systems and brakes and steering. It's definitely a little bit more invasive, but still is mostly just component replacement. And then finally, we do have train the trainer training as well. So this is going to include whichever level of service training you would like to train at. So whether it's the basic or the advanced. And then it would also include some guided practice. We would maybe instigate some faults in the vehicle, have you actually practice solving them and, provide some instructional strategies on how you would train some of your own staff. All right. With that, that's all I have, and I'm happy to open it up to questions. And I'm also going to stop sharing here.
Thank you, Andres. So how long before the buses arrive does the training begin? Like, what is your recommended time frame for that?
It's a lot of personal preference, but realistically, you don't want it probably more than 2 months before, just so you don't start forgetting the material.
Yeah.
So we're working on a deployment right now. The buses are going to be getting delivered probably mid to late May, and we will be sending them over the kind of video overviews about mid-April, so in a week or two here, and we'll be doing on-site training with a single bus, kind of the first one to arrive. That one will be taking place, I think, in the first week of May.
Mhm. So part of, you have the drivers, you got the maintenance staff, and then you got the executives.
Mhm.
Which ones, is there one that training them first helps everything else to flow better, or does it matter which order you train those different groups in, for acceptance or for a
Sure.
smooth transition?
Yeah, I think maybe not necessarily training, but early exposure for the drivers is kind of a big thing. So that's where a demo would be quite helpful.
Mhm.
Because a lot of folks, they get nervous when you introduce a new technology, whatever the reasoning might be. So if you expose them early and often to the fact that this is a viable product, that it is safe, that it's, nice and smooth to drive, it's very quiet, the driver acceptance is going to be a huge thing. So doing a demo first, I think that's one of my biggest recommendations. If you have the time for it, definitely bring a demo out and show it to your staff. That's going to be absolutely huge. In terms of, operator service training, that is very, personal, I guess, depending on the school district. Some folks don't even want their service staff to be working on the buses. Some
Mhm.
people have service staff who, they more or less run the show. And if you don't get buy-in from the service staff, you're not going to be operating successfully operating an electric bus. So that it gets a little bit more personal then.
Awesome. Yeah. And Brandon at Cats, they did something really, really smart with their drivers is they treated it as the drivers with seniority or the best drivers got rewarded with being
Mhm.
able to drive the electric buses. So it was seen kind of as a reward for being really great, and it gave them a little sense of pride. So that was something that CATS did just really, really well to help get their drivers to accept this. Um,
Absolutely. And I would definitely recommend that too, because especially, ideally you're replacing old buses, right? If you've got something that's got 200,000 miles on it and it's from 2006, a new electric bus, it doesn't have gears that shift. It's a lot quieter. All of our buses come standard with AC, it's got a lot more creature comforts. And I've seen that, kind of philosophy nationwide, and it's definitely been quite successful.
Awesome. So when you're looking at the technicians and the maintenance staff, and maybe there's certain staff that will get trained on it and others that may not, are there certain skill sets that you're looking at? So maybe when a school district will be hiring new maintenance staff as people turn over, are there skill sets or maybe something non-traditional skill sets that school districts may start wanting to look for in their maintenance staff?
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing is going to be high voltage safety training. So that's not something that folks have, because traditional school buses are low voltage systems. There's not really, any real kind of danger of putting your finger in the wrong place and getting zapped. So high voltage safety training, how to identify high voltage components, high voltage wiring, that's definitely kind of a big thing. But like I was mentioning, that's actually a relatively easy course. It sounds intimidating, but I've gone through it personally. And I went through kind of a more advanced session so I could train some of my coworkers, and that was 2 days of 8 hours a day. So that's something, and I would actually frame that as maybe upskilling existing staff. That could be a good incentive. But yeah, if you're looking for new folks to work on electric buses, that would be one aspect. I think something else that might be a little bit different, but likely won't be so much as vehicles in general get more connected, is diagnosing through a diagnostic tool.
Mhm.
So that's, either a laptop or a tablet or something you plug in. But like I said, that's getting a lot more common nowadays. It's not just, looking at mechanical components and diagnosing it that way. It's a lot more digital nowadays.
Yeah, India and I are seeing that with the training of the charging technicians, service and maintenance repair. It's a lot of like you said, diagnostics, a lot of software. It's thinking through the different processes of what could be wrong.
Mhm.
Or what can we fix? So yeah, those are definitely new skills that we'll be looking for. Um,
Mhm.
you did mention that the preparation, you send out this digital package of this pre-training package before you actually come in. Is there anything else the school districts needs to do to prepare for you all to come in, whether it's the physical classroom and what they have for you, or any other preparation that they might need to make before training begins?
No, not specifically. Yeah, I mean, once again, it really is dependent on what kind of training you will be receiving. If you are wanting to do high level service training at your facility, you will want to make sure that you will have the proper protective equipment.
Mhm.
That's going to be high voltage safety gloves or, whatever that might be, right? And you would learn about that in high voltage safety classes. So you do want to make sure that that's readily available, but generally speaking, there's a pretty long lead time before you actually get to that level of safety training. If you're doing just kind of the basics, just a shop bay is totally fine. We do typically have classroom sessions. So, if you've got a little, classroom area or, a lounge or whatever that we can present in, like that's totally fine. It's really not, super intensive, or intensive, I should say.
All right. So Dan and Christian, are y'all ready?
We are.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. I will stop my share in just a second, but Dan and Christian are going to be talking to you today from the point of view of Highland Electric Fleets. They're a company that can help you. They're kind of soup to nuts and help you through the whole process. And we're very excited to welcome them back again for this second installment. And I will turn it over to the two of you so you can
Awesome.
get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. And as we get started, Christian will start sharing our screen. Hey everyone, Dan Rosenfield. I lead our market development, education policy, and partnerships work in the Southeast, covering Louisiana. And Highland works with school districts across the country and charter schools around the country with turnkey fleet electrification. Christian, if you want to go to the first slide, what we see is, and as you guys have already learned in the webinar and the first part of the webinar, electrification is challenging, it's complex, it's risky, but when done correctly, it can lead to major cost savings, a higher uptime, better performance, a lower total cost of ownership, and better driver retention. So we thought of all the challenges that come with electrification, from grants and financing to the entire project planning to the procurement to the permitting to the driver training to the fueling to the smart charging, so demand charging. And what Christian will talk about is the maintenance side. We own and operate over 1,200 electric school buses across the country, growing every day. And so we understand most of the major OEMs, common maintenance issues, how to most importantly prevent maintenance issues. Because as you have learned in previous sessions, electric school buses has significantly fewer moving parts. And so when you focus on preventative maintenance and you know how to quickly identify and escalate issues, you will have a much higher uptime than your diesel or other fleets. Um, as background to how we think about maintenance at Highland, so our model is, if you go to the next slide, Christian, it's a bundled performance-based model. So we have a service agreement with all of our school districts. They essentially lease our buses for approximately 5 to 15 years, depending on the state. And there's no upfront cost as we amortize the remaining fee. But in terms of support, and what Christian will really highlight today is we have a layered maintenance approach. So we train all of the drivers and technicians for all of our school districts across the country. We also have a backup kind of maintenance service advisor team, which Christian leads, as well as you provide that ongoing maintenance support and remote diagnostics. The last slide that I'll cover is we have buses in the majority of states across the country. So from the extreme heat to the extreme cold, there are definitely considerations that need to be made, and Christian can really delve into that. But I'll pass it off to my teammate Christian, who is an expert in electrical bus maintenance. It can talk about how we think about maintenance, some common maintenance issues, how we also think about training, and how you should be training your staff. And then definitely want to open up to any questions about electric school bus maintenance. Pass it off,
Awesome.
Christian.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start off by just a quick training overview. So Highland provides comprehensive training for drivers, maintenance staff, and operations teams. We cover electric school bus operations, charger use, preventative maintenance. We go over our fleet management platform, as well as our support process. Targeted audience from the school district side would be drivers, mechanics, and operations staff. So typically the transportation director is involved, people within the dispatch team, really anybody that they feel would benefit from better understanding, our offerings and how to utilize them the best way possible. Some more specific topics that we cover are ticketing and support. So we offer a customer-facing portal that allows them to monitor key metrics as well as create tickets for support or maybe even maintenance reimbursements. Additionally, like I said, we have some data dashboards, fleet and charge management, and in the reimbursement process is also handled. Our training plan can be seen here. Basically, we perform bus and charger training in a classroom setting with some hands-on aspects. We typically have a bus in the bus barn on a lift for overview, as well as a ride and drive. And then we do a plug cycle exercise with every driver that is involved in the training. So again, bus and charger training would be classroom training, approximately 6 hours combined. And we typically do that as soon as the site is ready. So once the chargers and buses are good to go, typically a week out from that, we have this scheduled for in-person training. And again, targeted staff would be drivers, maintenance, as well as operations staff. And then could be a couple weeks down the road from that. FleetX is our customer facing dashboard. So we do a virtual training with the primary users of that dashboard. It takes approximately 30 minutes and it's done virtually. But basically, we're targeting anybody that will be utilizing our customer-facing dashboard. So again, transportation directors, operations staff, even the maintenance team. A lot of times, school districts identify the maintenance team as the best people to submit tickets. Typically, they're fielding, anything that's written up. So anything that the maintenance team needs help on or wants to collaborate on for repair, they can submit tickets to us. And then we can support them remotely with a lot of data, repair solutions, tribal knowledge. And then lastly, we do maintenance training. So we provide training on diagnostics, fault code interpretation, and then best preventative maintenance procedures. We do offer some different levels of, offerings. So it really varies by tier, the length of this training. But typically, we are collaborating directly with our customers very closely over the first year, getting them comfortable, working with them. We have a team of technicians that will support repairs. And typically, we want to make sure our customers are comfortable. So if it requires us to be on site to get them comfortable and work through some of the first issues that they see to make them more comfortable moving forward, we will do that. And then again, location, I would say it's blended. We have a remote support team as well as a physical maintenance staff. So we'll do a little bit of supporting from both teams. And typically, again, audience would be mechanics and maintenance. Some of the key topics that we really train on are housekeeping tips, really best practices for, hey, hang up your charge cable. If there's charge port covers, put them on, close the charging door, typical best housekeeping practices to really make you guys successful. We go through OEM bus tips and tricks as well as just general electric school bus tips and tricks. We go over preconditioning and what the options are based on the OEM selection. 12-volt battery health. 12-volt batteries are very vital for this electric school bus. So we go over quite a bit of best practices. We touch on regenerative braking, which I just saw on the test. That's a big feature, and when used correctly, really extends the range of these vehicles as well as reducing maintenance costs. We'll go over dashboard and low SOC, so we'll make sure the drivers are comfortable with everything that's in front of them, and they understand what the symbols mean and what to look out for, and the best way to ensure that they have enough energy to get from point A to point B. Energy optimization, really this can be on the bus side and the charger side, but we go over a lot of good rules of thumb on how to really reduce costs in every means possible. Holiday preparation, we really have identified the best practice for keeping these buses happy over long periods of downtime. So we have some best practices we'll share for holiday prep. Charging, obviously that's a huge topic. We want drivers to be comfortable when they return from routes, plugging the vehicles in. So we go through a lot of charging discussions, ensuring to make sure everybody's comfortable, understands what they're seeing, what they're doing, how to start a charging session, understanding the communication that's taking place on plug-in and approximately how long it takes to start charging the vehicle after plug-in, what to do when they encounter a connection failure. Typically, rule of thumb is, hey, if you are waiting for your bus to charge and it didn't start charging, we're gonna have to try again. So basically, don't come up to the bus, plug it in, and walk away. Plug it in, utilize the screen on the charger, and say, okay, my bus is charging, and it's going to be ready for route when I, come back in the afternoon. We'll also go over ending a charge session, which is important. Make sure your staff is comfortable and ready to hit the road. And then lastly, ticketing. Just important to understand, what the options are for getting support, getting reimbursed. Yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. So FleetX, this is our customer-facing portal. It's a comprehensive fleet management portal. It's available mobile, tablet, and desktop. But we really want to understand your operations and make sure you have access to key metrics. So we monitor performance, we track vehicle performance, state of charge, and range in real time. We support you guys through our support and ticketing options. And also we will house some of our training resources within this customer dashboard as well. So it's a very useful tool. We continue to take feedback from our customers and optimize this tool. So again, it's a very cool, unique offering that Highland brings to the table, and I feel like it's a big benefit to our customers. All right, and just kind of doubling down on our maintenance support value, we do monitor vehicle telemetry and fault codes to help customers. So not only are we reactive, we are very proactive. We have a technical operations team that is utilizing telemetry or remote data to analyze and to flag any concerns before it results in a bus being broken down on the side of the road full of children. So we're really doing a lot of proactive review and monitoring to best support our customers. But basically, we're monitoring and analyzing. So we continuously monitor telemetry, understand faults, build tribal knowledge, and really get ahead of any type of concerns and communicate that to you. We leverage historical data to identify what has resolved similar issues in the past. So on our end, we have, work order management system. We're really utilizing AI. When things come in, we're putting, proposed repair solutions in front of our staff to best help you. And then again, we enable resolution. So we provide actionable information to our customers and dealers so they can quickly resolve issues and get buses back in service. So when someone from our staff reviews a concern that either we've identified proactively or you guys have submitted a concern for, we're really responding with data-backed information. Ideal goal here is to say, hey, this is what's going on with your vehicle, and this is how we can fix it. And then we support you along the way. I just want to touch on some general best practices. Always be charging. Plug-in buses whenever not in use to maintain optimal range. Monitor state of charge. We recommend keeping buses above 20% SOC when possible to extend the battery life. Precondition the vehicles. Use shore power for cabin heating, cooling before routes. So most vehicles have preconditioning capabilities that will allow you to heat the cabin maybe during your pre-trip, utilizing power from the grid versus power from the battery. And again, it's just an effort to keep that battery life above 20% when you guys return from route. And then lastly, submit tickets early. Report issues promptly through FleetX for faster resolution. So my recommendation is let us help with resolutions. We have, again, a lot of experience, a lot of tribal knowledge that we want to share with our customers. So if you have an issue really that's keeping a vehicle out of service, let us provide you with documentation, feedback, and help you get the asset returned to service as quickly as possible. And then I will open it up for questions for Dan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So let me see if there is something here in the chat. Okay, that's contact information. All right, so thank you. So tell me a little bit more in case somebody is on the training today that perhaps wasn't on the training last time. Tell us a little bit about just who you are, what you all do, how does a school district work with your organization, and how will that how does that benefit them? So that way they know your business model, the basics.
Yeah. Thanks, Ann. So if a school has, we work well with both schools who have never electrified before, but or have maybe tried to what we call piecemeal their electrification. And what that means is if you piecemeal your electrification, you're buying your bus from one of our great OEMs, you're trying to buy a charger, and you're trying to figure it out yourself. That leads to a few issues. One is cost, because you're going directly through dealer channels, which may be more expensive. You're trying to figure out interoperability, which is one of the most common maintenance issues that we see with electric school buses, which is the how the charger vehicle and infrastructure communicate with each other, as well as just timeline, because you're trying to do it yourself, and electrification is very specific, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong if not done correctly with trained personnel. And so the process at school districts, if they've never gone electric before and want to work with us, we would take their fleet list, which means the buses that they're looking to potentially replace with electric. We would conduct a site walk. So we go to their depot, no cost. We look at what infrastructure they have. We talk to their utility on their behalf to determine what infrastructure upgrades would be required. Then we put together both a site plan and a proposal. And that site plan shows what infrastructure would be required, where the buses would sit, where the chargers would sit, as well as a proposal for that annual service agreement that we use with our business model. And then from there, we handle the entire process from applying for the grants on the school district's behalf, to the actual project planning and build out and construction. And then we ensure that the district does not pay until the buses are route ready. So uh, just some of our deployments in Louisiana was the Inspire NOLA project. They have about 42 vehicles in the greater New Orleans area. And that's a full turnkey project where we built out the infrastructure, secured the vehicles, and Christian and his team will be with them for no pressure, Christian, but for years, and advising them on maintenance, training them, and ensuring that their fleet is for success. It's, I think, really important that you don't do you. I mean, you can do it yourself, but there are a lot of issues that can come with it. And we have a lot of relationships with. I see Andres on here, so with Ride, with Bluebird, Thomas, IC, and all the charger manufacturers, so that you're not trying to do this yourself and expose yourself to a lot of risk.
So what training that you all provide is so if you're, I'm assuming you say if you pick Ride as the dealership, what do you provide additional training? Do you dovetail with
Mm.
them? Do you just show up when they do their training and add to it? Tell me how that relationship works with the dealership, and the extra services that you provide for training.
Christian, you want to take that one?
Yes, absolutely. Typically, our training staff will collaborate with the local dealer that's actually supplying the vehicles. So we will collaborate with them to provide, vehicle-specific training as well as perform, some of the trainings that we offer as well. So it's a good partnership. It really doubles down on the vehicle-specific element to the training. But regardless if the OEM is present or not, all of our training is catered to the products that you guys are receiving. But it is a great tool to have, the OEM and dealership collaborate. So we do that whenever possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to switch back and bring this here. And not seeing any questions in the Q&A, so we're going to move on to India. So India is with the BRCC, Baton Rouge Community College, and we do have a grant that we won called GAMBO, where we work with BRCC to develop curriculum to train service maintenance and repair and installation of EV charging infrastructure. So we figured this is a great time to tell you all about this and about some additional resources for more training for the charging side, not the bus side. So I want to welcome India today. And do you want me to stop sharing?
Good morning. Yes, please. And I'm
Yeah.
going to share my screen. Hopefully I can figure it out.
Okay, while she's pulling that, I want to remind you all that at the conclusion of India's presentation, we're going to have Tyler is going to come on and talk to you about a great resource that is going to be really helpful for all of you. And then we are going to have our survey. So if you are here as a participant, that is one of the most important things is we need you to answer the survey so we can turn that into our granting facility, granting organization. So we can get paid and we can continue to provide these kinds of resources to you for free. Thank you, India.
Right.
Yeah, just
All good?
yeah, click
All
that.
good?
There you go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. As Ann said, my name is India Ambo, and we have been working, I'm at BRCC, and we've been working with Louisiana Clean Fuels to develop this EVSE technician training. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum, what it involves, what students would be learning throughout the course, and potential offerings that are coming in the future. So EVSE is electric vehicle supply equipment. And basically what that is anything that has to do with working with the equipment that has to do with charging stations, charging vehicles, and how those two will communicate with each other. It's the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. And so it includes level 1, 2, and DC fast chargers. So it will be what you would be working with and all the different types, learning what they are, how they work, and what the differences are between the three. And then the installation and maintenance, as well as what technicians would need to be trained in before they start working. And so the curriculum overview, this would basically prepare our students to work in the electric vehicle space as technicians. We want to focus on operation and maintenance, troubleshooting, and then field readiness. So our students will learn how these systems behave, how failures occur, and then how to communicate those issues clearly. And so a lot of times people don't talk about the communication and what that involves. And so we wanted to make sure that our training included that. And this training was also based on the Society of Automotive Engineers Technician certification. And so once you finish this course, you will be prepared to take that certification test. So if you go to SAE's website here at this link, you would see that BRCC is listed as a recognized training entity. So like I said, we want our students to be prepared to be able to take this course, pass it, and then be recognized as a certified electric vehicle supply equipment field technician. And so that's an international certification, as you can see. Our core training modules, we have 4 of them, but before the course begins, you would be required to take the NFPA 70E that everybody talked about before. And so that just kind of makes sure we keep everyone safe and kind of knowing how to apply the safety to the principles in this course. Module 1 is basically a refresher on the OSHA 10 and NFPA safety information. And then the electric principles involved in that, including like the charging stations and the infrastructure. Module 2 is basically understanding the supply power. So how the different types of EVs work with the different types of charging stations, levels 1 and 2 and 3, the fast charging, grounding and bonding, how to use different digital meters, and then when to use different digital meters to figure out what the problems and issues are. Module 3 is the charging station handshake. So basically how the car communicates with the equipment, which is kind of the most important thing. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of the course and of being an EVSE technician. And then module 4 kind of goes into the field practices, a day in the life of a technician, documentation, different types of repair orders, and some soft skills. So basically, what are the different types of repair orders, when they will be used, and then how to distribute that information, explain that information to everybody that's involved. Some supplemental training that we've included is an installation module. that would be something that would be based on the different offers. So in different areas, the installation process is different. So we have based our installation module on how it will work here in Baton Rouge and with our city requirements. As Ann was saying, IT and troubleshooting and broadband, those things are sometimes overlooked, but they can be a big problem in things that cause malfunctioning of EVSE equipment. So we've included that. And then also some guest lectures from industry professionals, the Department of Ag and Forestry, who controls weights and measures. And they also have a certification that a technician would have to have before they are able to work in the field. And then the city of Baton Rouge, like I said, to explain more about the installation process here in our city. And then some soft skills, resume writing, interview training, communication, being able to talk to patrons as well as the company that you work for to make sure any issues are being resolved and then everybody understands what's going on. In speaking to different industry professionals, we found that one of the biggest issues that they have is not finding people to work. It's having them to show up for work, being able to communicate, and just being professional overall. So that's also something that we wanted to make sure our students had access to. So getting a little bit more detailed into the learning outcomes of each module. Module 1, like I said, is just kind of the basics of electricity. We want to talk about the fundamentals of EV charging. So what the equipment is, the major components, the charging system, the different types of cables, connectors, and controllers, and then how the EVSE integrates with the vehicle and the power grid. The second learning outcome is basically comparing level 1, level 2, and then the fast charging based on that voltage and amperage, and then the application of those. And then we get into the standards a little bit, the J1772, the different types, and how those play a key role in the EVSE equipment and why it's important to know the difference. And then also some compliance things. That's what you need to know to kind of stay with what's going on in the area, in the field, and making sure everybody stays safe. The third learning outcome, electrical safety practices. So everything you learned in module 1 is being able to apply all of that safety equipment, everything you learned about being safe with electricity, the correct use of PPE, lockout, tagout, OSHA 10, and then the NFPA 70. So it's basically gives an overview of that. And then the tools that you'll be using to test the equipment. So how to operate the tools, which tool to use in which situation, learning how to handle voltage, different multimeters, and then interpreting the results and being able to explain those results. And as far as conducting the basic installation and maintenance tasks, learning what it takes to be able to work on these different charging stations, knowing what the limitations are, identifying what the problems could be, if it's wiring, grounding, and also just being able to perform routine maintenance, visual inspections, cable checks, cleaning it. So just the things that would, a lot of preventative maintenance to keep larger problems from occurring. And like I said, professionalism, soft skills, communicating with team members, interpreting diagrams, and being able to verbalize what you know about these diagrams, and then reporting back to your employer and reporting back to the person who is who's getting their equipment fixed. So basically just a lot of communication. And so that's the basics of what we'll talk about in Module 1. Module 2, we'll be analyzing the electric supply vehicle. So everything we learned in Module 1, now we're starting to do the application side of it. So we're identifying the different types of EVs. We're distinguishing between like single phase and 3-phase power, and then explaining the benefits of the different types, benefits, and also some something that might be holding you back as far as using that different type. So knowing when to use which type, safety of that, and then improving efficiency, and then safety, of course. The second learning outcome is evaluating and then comparing the EV charging levels. So interpreting the technical specifications of each level, the voltage, the current, and then identifying the different scenarios and environments for using each charging level. So like I said, finding out what's appropriate for each situation. And then actually performing the testing. So we talked about what would be using different multimeters and which one would be appropriate in which situation. So now we're talking about how to use those multimeters in the situation. Just kind of being able to diagnose and understand what the diagnoses mean. And then the grounding and bonding, explaining the roles of that, protecting everybody in the environment, ground resistance, verifying system safety, and then also identifying the grounding and bonding deficiencies that could be happening based on the results that you're getting from these different multimeters. So a lot of applications. So like I said, in module 1, we're forming the base of everything and just kind of making sure everybody understands electricity. And then module 2, we're building on that. The fifth learning outcome, using digital meters and then safely and effectively. So like I said, just knowing which meters to use, making sure you know how to use them, and everybody involved can stay safe. And then executing with a lot of lab activities. So all of our modules contain their own lab activities. We have our own labs set up. So anybody that takes our course will be able to have like lecture options, usually the first part of the course, and then at the end, towards the end of the day, you'll be doing the lab exercises associated with that module. And so module 3 is really getting into the communication, which basically how the vehicle communicates with the equipment. And so learning how to summarize like vehicle to grid, like I said, the different communication protocols, and then demonstrating the procedures for testing, using those diagnostic tools, and then actually doing a lot of hands-on simulation with the equipment that we have in our labs. The repair orders will basically be showing the different types of repair orders there are, learning how to, learning how to, learning how to talk about what happens in those different repair orders, and then using them to move forward as far as trying to explain how those things won't happen again to the person who owns the equipment, and then taking that information back to the employer to show what you did, how you did it, and making sure you're not going outside of your expertise and what you are trained to do. And so the third learning outcome is more of the Wi-Fi and cellular communication standards. So how those two compare, which one would be better in which situation, and then also how the local area networks can provide the internal communication as far as the charging components. And so all of that works together. And so we wanted to make sure we covered a good bit of that in the course without going too deep into the weeds, but making sure our students have exposure to that. And again, more hands-on activities to kind of show how that will work in a real life situation. Module 4 is mostly the soft skills. So modules 1, 2, and 3, a lot of the meat and potatoes and the information on EVSE equipment. And so module 4 is basically putting it all together, talking about being professional in the field, using everything you've learned, interacting with current EVSE technicians, kind of going through a day in the life, what they do, what they can't do, completing these repair orders and documentation. Like I said, being able to understand the different types of repair orders, which ones are needed in different cases, and then providing documentation to show everything you did. And that goes into the different types of repairs and using the types of repairs to kind of talk about ethics and doing the right thing and not trying to take advantage of people, showing up on time, speaking to people, eye contact. Those things may seem very small, but in the field, it seems like that's one of the things that these professionals have been having issues with. So we decided to include it in our course. And like I said, more practical exercises, going into the lab, role playing with our partners that will provide a lot of our guest lectures and things like that. So we have different professionals in different areas, like electricians, and then people that actually work with electric vehicles, and just kind of getting different sides of it and kind of helping our students figure out where they feel like they could fit in as an EV technician. And so now I want to talk about the course that we will be offering this summer for electric school bus operators. Right now, our course is set to be June 29th through July 2nd at our Ardendale campus, which is our automotive campus. And so we have our labs and everything set up there. It'll be 4 days intensive, 8 to 5:30. And so in this course, it's a what's the word? It's a very intensive course, a lot that you'll get in a small amount of time. The course is usually 160 hours, but because we kind of know you're professionals working in the field already, we can kind of bring that down into 4 days and kind of give you exactly what you need to get in a small amount of time. So we have 2 professors that'll be working on 2 days. One professor will be doing the first 2 modules, focusing on the electricity portion, and then the other professor will be working on the communication standards and a lot of the lab information that you'll be getting, which is at our automotive campus. And so NFPA 70 is a prereq, and so everybody who signs up for the course will get a voucher, and you can do the training anytime before you come, and that would be a requirement to start the course. We'll have printed materials, all of the presentations and everything given to you, and then all of the lecture notes, the course outcomes, all of that will be included, as well as the lab activities, quizzes, answer sheets, things like that. And so to do that, it would be $15.50 per student. And so that would be what we're offering this summer. We're really excited about being able to do that. And so we hope to see some of you here in Baton Rouge at some point this summer. And so if you guys have any questions, you want to know more about the course, or just anything about EVSE and the training and how to be able to offer it, I'm here. Use a QR code, contact me, and I'll have Ann give out my contact information as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're really excited about this summer workshop, and yeah, and India, why don't you tell them what's coming next with the curriculum, about the installation?
Yeah, so we've started working on a full installation, and we have that here. Like I said, installation will be different depending on where you are in the world, because every city, every county has their own process. So it's very important. There is some information, obviously, that is going to be universal, but a lot of this has to do with getting permits and making sure this entity is involved and you paid for this certification and you paid for that. And so it's just a lot of what happens in your particular area. But we have our installation module that is prepared and will be run through our course whenever we offer the entire thing.
Yep, it'll be coming soon. Thank you so much. All right, so it looks like we may actually be able to let you all off a little bit early today, but first, before we go, we have 2 last things. Tyler is going to share a resource with you that we find is going to be very, very helpful on this topic, and we do need you to complete the survey. So I'm going to launch the survey now. Excuse me. While Tyler is going through his presentation of this really great resource that we will be sharing a link. I've shared the link in the chat, but if you missed it, we will email it to you again after today's training. So take it away, Tyler. And thank you again, India.
Yeah, hello everybody. As mentioned, I'm Tyler Herman with Louisiana Clean Fuels, and I'm going to quickly share a very, very, very brief overview of a resource from the World Resources Institute that is quite useful for electric school bus trainings. So this is a resource that's published in November 2024, And it's basically a set of standards for trainings being offered for electric school buses. I'll just kind of give a brief overview, and it's in the chat, and we'll be sending it to your emails as well so that you can review it. But basically, this document is meant to go through the various standards that you should be considering when evaluating a curriculum for electric school bus trainings or when developing a curriculum. So it's a fairly in-depth document. Again, we're not going to go through all of it in depth here, but kind of starts with an introduction, the scope and the purpose of it, who all's involved with it. And then it goes straight through awareness standards, and then these like levels of standards that it describes. And so we'll go down to that section because it's basically a set of checklists, which is the really valuable part here. I think that this kind of flow here is just worth looking at. This kind of sets the stage for what they're trying to do with the set of standards. So this is basically creating a set of standards that will help you develop a curriculum or can be used to judge a curriculum. And then that leads to the actual instruction down the road. And so this is kind of sliding in that kind of first spot there. So here in this document, this organizes this set of standards that was developed into 5 levels. There's the kind of introductory level, which is just electric school bus awareness. And so this is like general knowledge about electric school buses, basic questions about like why and how we should do electrification. And it's kind of focused more on the general audience, but it's going to also be kind of like high level people within a fleet kind of space who are not going to be working with the vehicles sort of on a daily basis or be in the nuts and bolts of it. And then the next kind of level is when we get to like the level 1 through 4, which is the actual operation side of things. So the first section is the electric school bus operation. So this is the actual like driving of the buses, organizing routes, those sorts of things, kind of like the day-to-day how these things actually operate and run in a fleet. And these will get more kind of complicated as you go down the levels. And so level 2 here is around safety. So all of the safety considerations with high voltage systems, maintenance facilities, how people operate on the buses, or what happens in the case of any sorts of emergencies. All of those sorts of things are kind of covered in level 2. And then the next level is electrical theory and electric school bus systems. So this gets a lot deeper into the concepts around how electricity works in these systems, how everything is put together, all the components within a school bus or the electric school bus. And this is kind of more designed for the maintenance technicians, as well as like dealers, dismantlers, upfitters, and training instructors. And then the last level that they go through is a more directly applied vehicle maintenance and troubleshooting system. So this is actually applying all the knowledge and stuff from the above levels and discussing how to actually maintain the buses, how to repair them, and how to troubleshoot issues as they arrive, including stuff around the high voltage systems and kind of how to manage those. So those are kind of the high level sort of sets of standards that this document goes through. And then I'll just show kind of what the standards look like. And then there's a lot of pages of this, so we will not go through each one of them. So scrolling through, really useful to see that they actually have the team of people who worked on this listed out. So they had quite a few partners on this. I believe Highland was involved in this part as well. So quite a long list of collaborators in this document. So it's relatively well vetted across kind of a wide spectrum of stakeholders. And then scrolling down through, and here's kind of what the standards look like. So it's broken down really simply. And this is, again, like how you might develop a curriculum for training on electric school buses, or how you might kind of evaluate an existing curriculum if you're considering one training versus another on any of these topics. And so this is just for the like the level 0, if you want to call it that, the general knowledge section of the curriculum, that first of the 5 levels. It goes through a kind of a checklist that you can go through, which is like defining what an electric school bus is and like describing its functions, describe how batteries and electricity power work within the buses, and kind of all through these. So some general knowledge and awareness stuff in this section, some benefits of electric school buses and electrification, differences from fossil fuel burning buses, all relatively high level, relatively kind of like basic overview type information, but stuff that is still quite important to know and that not everybody has been exposed to. So important for a curriculum to go through. And then stuff around like general safety, and then how this kind of slots into discussions around equity and sustainability, and those sorts of things. And that's that kind of the first level of the 5. That's what the checklist looks like there. And you'll see as scrolling through here, each one of these has a checklist that you'd go through. And you're really just like looking through this and kind of figuring out, okay, does this curriculum actually meet all of these goals? If somebody goes through this training, will they be able to, 1.1.1, identify which staff are qualified to drive these buses? And go through each one of those and just kind of check off the whole list and make sure that everything is covered. And so see, it's fairly in depth. Again, we're not going through all of these because it is just a lot to read. But this is, I think, a great place to kind of overview like what things are needed to understand and by whom when considering electric school buses. So I think even if you're not developing curriculums or analyzing them or vetting them, this is kind of a good place to look and just look at the kind of like really high level parts of this and get a feel for what things need to be covered and what things need to be understood by the different people within kind of a fleet system in order to decide whether or not electric school buses are for you and figure out how to actually slot them into your fleet. So yeah, that's what this document is. It looks much the same throughout the rest of it. It's just a set of checklists with all of these bullets. It goes through like each of the standards that need to be considered for the different sections. So it has some of the technical information, which is a great reference. If you're trying to figure out, okay, which standard is it that discusses this? It's in this kind of list here. And each one of them starts off with this: what is the learning objective? And then what are the checkpoints? And that's what the rest of this looks like. I don't think there's anything else really in this document. Oh yeah, there's also abbreviations and acronyms, which is also useful. And then a bunch of sources at the bottom. So I think it's a great document as an overview and as kind of an in-depth thing if you're actually looking at curriculums and trying to figure out what your fleet or organization should consider or develop.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. I am going to switch back here. And all right, so we do have the survey up currently. And we'd very much like for you to take a moment. One of you, thank you, has already completed the survey. The rest of you, if you could just take a few moments, it'll really help us to improve this training series. We have 2 more left, so your comments can help us to, shift or adjust if we need to. And also, this is how we get paid, is to show that you participated, that you were here today. So please take a moment to fill this out. All right, and just again, we wanted to share that there are a couple more resources that are out there. We will email and follow up with all of you after the fact and share these resources with you. And of course, the next session is April 14th, where we'll be talking about best practices for operating your fleet. And we will be going into some detail of the Lion Electrics as well. But if you did not get a Lion, that is fine. You'll still find this very useful session. And this next session, we are going to have it as a meeting, a Zoom meeting, because we want it to be more interactive, because you may have a lot more questions. You may want to interact with the presenters a little bit more. So instead of this webinar format, it will be a Zoom meeting format. So we look forward to seeing you on April 14th. But I will stop the recording now and keep it open for a few more minutes. Thank you.